So what the Democrats are doing is their failed strategy from 2016. So if you remember, Chuck Schumer famously said, for every blue-collar worker we lose in rural Pennsylvania, we're going to pick up 2-3 white-collared suburbanite voters. And you can repeat that in Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin. So what the Democrats were literally doing in order to try to win the presidential race, the presidential election, Democrats decided not to go after Democratic voters and inspire them to come out and vote. They decided to turn their back on Democratic voters and appeal to traditionally Republican voters. They're literally trying to figure out how to get Republicans to vote for them. And they lost. Hey, why not try to get people who agree with you to vote for you? Why not try to get lefties? Why not try to inspire people who are consider themselves traditional Democrats to vote for you? Why not try to get some of those 100 million people who didn't vote come out and vote for you? Because that would mean they'd have to serve those people. So what they decide to do is try to get Republicans who agree with their platform, which the Republicans agree with the Democratic platform. Democrats agree with the Republican platform. There's no two-party system here. Nancy Pelosi is funding and passing Trump's entire agenda. They're in agreement on screwing people over they don't want to give you health care during a pandemic. They don't want to give you a UBI, both parties. And so the strategy for the Democrats, the literal strategy, is to try to appeal to Republicans because they know they can't appeal to workers or Democrats. They got nothing for them. So they try to appeal to Republicans, and the only way they appeal to people on the left or Democrats is to say, we're not as bad as that other guy. That guy's worse. It's the lesser of two evil. And why anyone would accept voting for evil? Yeah, but it's lesser. Still evil. You want to get killed with a gun or a knife? Still evil. And what is voting for the lesser of two evils? What is it, if it's taught us anything? What has it taught us? It's taught us that you get a worse evil 4 years later every goddamn time. Which is why they invited John Kasich to speak at the DNC, because they're trying to get Republicans to vote for them again. They're trying to get Republicans to vote for them again. This is their strategy. And I'm going to show you in the next segment, it's failing. Again, it failed in 2016. And right now it's failing because Trump has narrowed the gap. You know that big 10-point lead? It's now erased. Why John Kasich, a lifelong Republican, is helping launch Joe Biden's Democratic Party? Because Joe Biden is a lifelong Republican ideologically. Because there's no difference between John Kasich and him. So there's John Kasich getting ready for his big deal, and he's right at the crossroads. See, he's staying at a crossroads. He's standing at a crossroads, John Kasich, crossroads for America, as he wears his blue button-down shirt and his khaki pants with his brown penny loafers, topsiders. So you know he's an original thinker, an original man. And I love what Lauren says. She says, this is me deciding whether I should bust a union or close down abortion clinics. Because that's who John Kasich is. That's who John Kasich is. He's anti-worker, anti-woman. Pro-corporate. John Kasich is speaking at the DNCC tonight. As part of his pre-speech media blitz, he's slamming AOC, one of our rising stars. So glad we gave the anti-choice union buster a prime speaking slot. I'm sure it will sway at least 5 voters. This is their strategy. They're doing it again. They're going straight after the Republicans. They're not even trying to get Democrats to vote. The only reason they let Bernie Sanders on stage last night was to tell you to vote for a Republican. He wasn't there to tell you this party's let you down and you should demand more from it. He wasn't there to say it is a gross obscenity that a party that's claims to be the People's Party won't even give its own people health care in the middle of a pandemic while it gives trillions away to corporations. He wasn't there to say that. He wasn't there to talk about the gross immorality of the Democratic Party not even offering health care to people or a UBI in the middle of a pandemic. He wasn't there to do that. And so here's what AOC. So AOC jumps in on this because I don't know if you saw, John Kasich called her out during his speech. John Kasich called her out during his speech, said that she is not the party. She's the extreme left like AOC. She responded. It's great that Kasich has woken up and realized the importance of supporting a Biden-Harris ticket. I hope he gets through to GOP voters. Yet, also, something tells me a Republican who fights against women's rights doesn't get to say who is or isn't representative of the Democratic Party. That's AOC fighting for you. She's not screaming that the Democrats are inviting Republicans to marginalize progressives at the DNC, giving him more time to speak than progressives. She's not there. Here's what, they doesn't say that. Here's what I say. Hey, after being marginalized and publicly humiliated by a Republican who was given more time to speak at the DNC convention than me, this was the amount of pushback I was allowed to give by Nancy Pelosi. This is an abusive relationship, AOC, that you're in. You're in an abusive relationship with the Democratic Party. It's just amazing. They bring John Kasich on. The entire Democratic convention is that song from Oklahoma. The fascists and the centrists should be friends. Oh, the fascists and the centrists should be friends. 4 Republicans and a progressive for 1 minute. That's what it was. 4 Republicans and a progressive for 1 minute equals the DNC. I'm not a math surgeon, but I'm pretty sure that's a shitty ratio. Hey, let's have a Republican tell us what our party is and isn't. Say the people who love to scream, Bernie's not a Democrat at the top of their lungs. Remember that? Bernie's not a Democrat. But let's bring on John Kasich to tell us who is. AOC went on. She said, we can build bridges and not lose sight of our values. What? It's important to remember that Kasich is an anti-choice extremist. He 100% will and has signed away our reproductive rights the moment he has the opportunity to do so. He is not a friend to workers. I say the funny part is that Kasich is more welcome in the Democratic Party than you are. So why do you keep working to prop up this completely corrupt, anti-progressive, corporate pro-war party? There is no answer to that. There's no answer to that. If she answered it, it would be a lie. There's no answer to that because she's not going to challenge her leadership because that would be hard. So she doesn't take corporate money, but she takes orders from the people who do take the corporate money. So what is the point, as Norman Solomon loves to point out, what is the point of voting for progressives in the first place? There is no point. Norman's right. Norman Solomon is right. There's no point to voting for progressives if they're going to go along with the people who take the corporate money anyway. And why is Nancy Pelosi the leader of AOC? The reason why, you know how Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer become leader? Here's how you become the leader in the House. You become the biggest corporate money bag. You take as much money as you can from corporations. You get as corrupted as you can. That's what Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer do. Chuck Schumer takes his money from Wall Street. Nancy Pelosi takes it from everybody. And then they hand it out to their friends in Congress so they can go get reelected. Here, take this money to your campaign. And then when times comes to vote for leader, who are you going to vote for? The person who gave you the money for your campaign, right? That's how they become leader. They're the most corrupt people in the party. And so AOC is now beholden to Nancy Pelosi, the most corrupt person in Congress in the Democratic Party. It's Nancy Pelosi. So Norman Solomon's right. There's no point to voting for AOC if she's just going to go along with Nancy Pelosi anyways, which she is. She voted for the CARES Act, the largest upward transfer of wealth in the history of the human race. She didn't call out the Democrats. She didn't even call out Nancy Pelosi. She pretended it was the Republicans doing. She only is allowed, because why? Because she was allowed to call out the Republicans. Nancy Pelosi said, you can say the bill is bad, but you can only say it's the Republicans' fault. And AOC said, okay. I'll go lie to everybody and pretend that it's not my leadership's fault. I'll pretend it's Mitch McConnell's fault for the bill we're passing in the House. Which is what she did. So John Kasich gets to go up at the Democratic convention and tell them that progressives aren't real Democrats. And AOC isn't even allowed to push back on that. Do you think she's allowed to go on stage and say John Kasich is anti-woman and anti-worker? No, she's not allowed to do that. And she's okay with that. She doesn't push back. You know, if she went on and just read this tweet, that would have been her whole speaking time they gave her at the convention. The Democrats are counting on people who aren't in the party to tell them what they are and what they aren't. And they're expecting another guy who's not in the party, Bernie Sanders, to unite them. Literally. They bring out John Kasich to tell him who's a real Democrat and who's not. And they bring out Bernie Sanders, that they all say isn't a Democrat, to unite the party. It's almost like they're just a front that stands for absolutely nothing, and we need a new party.
But, you know, Jimmy, they are giving us a new party. I mean, the Democrats have worked really hard these last 40 years to just become
Republicans.
Yes.
Well, I love what Nucho Libre says. AOC's purpose is to trick gullible progressives into thinking they have a home in an anti-worker party. Isolated voices of opposition within the Democratic Party have a negative consequence. They give legitimacy to the Democrats as opponents of the Republicans. Let me read that to you again. The isolated voices of opposition within the Democratic Party, no matter well-intentioned, have a negative consequence. They give legitimacy to the Democrats as opponents of the Republicans. This kind of resonates as true, doesn't it? That's from Peter Conejo, by the way. Kind of resonates as true, right? Those isolated voices, AOC, Rashid Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, the voices of opposition within the Democratic Party, no matter well-intentioned, have a negative consequence. They give legitimacy to the Democrats as opponents of the Republicans when they are not. And she's not allowed to say that. AOC's not allowed to say that Nancy Pelosi is not an opponent of the Republicans. She's not allowed to say that Nancy Pelosi is passing Trump's entire agenda, including money for the border wall. She's not allowed to say that. And so what? She doesn't. So Peter Conejo goes on, the exceptions to the general rule, meaning the people who aren't corporatists inside the Democratic Party, like AOC. So the exceptions to the general rule, like AOC, are allowed on a condition that after the primary campaigns, they urge a vote for the Democratic nominee. This must be done no matter how different that endorsed candidate's positions are from the positions taken during the primary. Those are the dues you have to pay to play in that game. Otherwise, you will be eliminated and driven out of the House, the Senate, or the governor's office. There you go. But they like this guy. Here's what the Democrats like.
Have you ever been stopped by a policeman who was an idiot? I had this idiot pull me over on 315. Listen to this story. He says to me, he says, you passed this emergency vehicle on the side of the road and you didn't yield. I didn't, officer. What are you kidding? I didn't see any. I didn't even see where the heck was it? And the last thing I would ever do would be to pass an emergency. Are you kidding me? He says, well, I understand that. Give me your license. Goes back to the car, comes back, gives me a ticket, says you must report to court. If you don't report to court, we're putting a warrant out for your arrest. He's an idiot.
So that's their strategy, to get that guy to appeal to Republicans to vote Democrat. That's their big idea, is to get Republicans to vote for a Democrat. They're trying to get Republicans to vote for a Republican who happens to say he's a Democrat. And that's their strategy. You know how I know? That was their strategy last time. Can I play it for you? I will play it for you.
Of blue-collar, high school-educated voters we will lose is smaller than people think, because the people who go for Trump's appeal, particularly immigration and, you know, the them versus us, they're already Republicans.
That's what they're doing. The Democrats are trying to get a Republican to get other Republicans to vote Democrat, because the Democrats are so horrible they can't convince Democrats to vote for Democrats. The Democratic Party, polite to all the Republicans invited to their convention, spends $15 million to make sure the progressive challengers lose. I wonder what their agenda is. I wonder what the Democratic Party's agenda is. They're polite. They bring it. They invite John Kasich and a bunch of Republicans. They spend $15 million to defeat Bernie Sanders and any other progressive. I wonder what their agenda is.
Well, I mean, did they pass anything that Trump wanted?
No, just everything. I mean, besides everything, just including money for his border wall. Yes. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.